Before I begin, I need you to do one thing. If you love real, emotional, suspenseful stories that slowly reveal truths you never see coming, then make sure you subscribe right now. Because the story I'm about to share isn't just another family story. It's about silence. It's about doubt. And it's about a truth that changed my life forever. Stay until the end. Because what seemed like coincidence at first turned into something I never expected. My name is Zaza. I'm 30 years old now. For years, I kept this story buried inside me. Not because I forgot it, but because remembering it still hurts. There are moments in life when everything seems normal on the outside. But inside, something feels wrong. You can't explain it. You can't prove it. But you feel it. And sometimes, that feeling is right. This isn't a love story. It isn't a happy family memory. It's a story about instincts, about a mother's happiness, and about a man who entered our lives in two very different roles. After my father passed away when I was still a child, my mother became everything. She wasn't just my parent. She was my protector, my provider, my entire world. She owned a small, old-fashioned boutique in our town. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't luxurious. But it was hers. I watched her wake up before sunrise. I watched her manage customers, suppliers, bills, and still come home smiling for me. She never complained. In my eyes, she was strength itself. Years passed peacefully. It was just the two of us. A quiet life. Stable. Predictable. Until I left for university. Starting university felt like stepping into a different universe. New people. New ideas. New freedom. For the first time, I felt independent. I wasn't just my mother's daughter anymore. I was becoming my own person. That's when I met him. Mr. Stan. He was my philosophy lecturer. From the first class, I was impressed. He had a powerful way of speaking. He didn't just teach theory. He challenged the way we thought about life, morality, truth. He had presence. Students respected him. I respected him. At first. In the beginning, our interactions were normal. After class, I would sometimes ask questions about the lecture. He seemed pleased by my curiosity. We had discussions about ideas, books, perspectives. But slowly something changed. It wasn't something obvious. It wasn't something I could report. It was subtle. The way his gaze lingered a little too long. The way he stood slightly closer than necessary. The way silence would stretch between us. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. Don't overthink, I said to myself. But instincts don't disappear just because we ignore them. There were moments when he would place his hand on my shoulder while explaining something. It seemed harmless on the surface. Almost fatherly. But it didn't feel fatherly. It felt uncomfortable. And discomfort is a language of its own. One afternoon, he asked me to stay after class to discuss an assignment. That wasn't unusual. But the conversation drifted away from academics. It became personal. Questions about my life. My family. My plans. His tone was calm, friendly. Yet something felt heavy in the air. There was a kind of attention in his eyes that didn't feel like a teacher evaluating a student. It felt like he was observing me in a different way. I left that classroom feeling confused. Not scared. Not threatened. Just uneasy. And sometimes unease is worse than fear, because you can't explain it. After that, I started creating distance. I sat further back in class. I avoided eye contact. I stopped staying after lectures. If he offered help, I politely declined. I convinced myself that if I kept things formal and distant, everything would go back to normal. And for a while, it did. Or at least, it seemed that way. The semester passed. I focused on my studies. I convinced myself that I had simply misread the situation. Maybe I was being sensitive. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe I was wrong. I wanted to be wrong. After a year, I returned home during break. That's when I noticed something different. My mother looked happier. Not just slightly happier. Radiant. She smiled more. She hummed while cooking. Sometimes I caught her staring into space with a soft expression on her face. I hadn't seen that look in years. One evening, she sat beside me in the living room. Her hands were slightly trembling. Not from fear, but excitement. She told me she had met someone. someone kind, someone respectful, someone who made her feel alive again. My heart felt warm hearing that. For years, she had sacrificed everything for me. If she had finally found happiness, who was I to question it? I told her I wanted to meet him, and she smiled in a way I hadn't seen since before my father passed away. The house was spotless that evening. The table was prepared carefully. Candles. Her best dishes. I could see how important this was to her. When the doorbell rang, my heart beat a little faster. This was the man who made my mother glow again. She opened the door, and when he stepped inside, my world froze. It was Mr. Stan, my lecturer. My chest tightened instantly. My hands felt cold. For a second, I thought I was mistaken. But I wasn't. He stood there, smiling politely, holding flowers. My mother introduced him proudly. He looked at me and pretended to be surprised. "What a coincidence," he said calmly. "I had no idea you were her daughter." His tone was smooth. Too smooth. My mother laughed, delighted by what she believed was a charming coincidence. But inside me, a storm was forming. Every memory of his gaze. Every uncomfortable moment. Every strange silence. It all came rushing back. I wanted to speak. I wanted to say something. But I looked at my mother's face, glowing with hope, and I stayed silent. Dinner went on normally. He was polite, respectful, charming. If I had never met him before, I might have believed he was perfect. But I had. And something inside me refused to relax. Still days passed. Then weeks. He began visiting often. My mother looked happier than ever. Their connection seemed natural. There were no obvious red flags. No inappropriate behavior. Nothing I could clearly point to. Eventually, they got married. And he became my stepfather. Months went by peacefully. At home, he behaved appropriately. Calm. Supportive. Responsible. I began questioning myself. Maybe I misjudged him. Maybe my mind exaggerated things. Maybe I was unfair. Seeing my mother so happy made it hard to hold on to suspicion. Slowly, I allowed myself to breathe again. Maybe everything truly was fine. Maybe the discomfort I once felt was just stress. Maybe this was the new beginning our family needed. And for a while, I believed that. But sometimes, silence doesn't mean safety. And peace doesn't always mean truth. And before I continue, if you believe instincts matter, if you believe silence can sometimes protect others, then subscribe to this channel. Stories like this aren't easy to tell, but they need to be heard. Now let me finish what I started. After my mother married Ethan, life seemed normal. Too normal. He played the role of a perfect husband. He helped around the house. He brought flowers for my mom. He asked about my studies. If someone saw us from outside, they would say, "That's a happy family." And that's what made everything more confusing. Because I started doubting myself. Maybe I misunderstood him at university. Maybe I exaggerated the tension. Maybe I was unfair. Months passed peacefully. And slowly my guard lowered. Until one evening reminded me why I felt uncomfortable in the first place. It happened in the kitchen. My mother had gone to visit a neighbor. It was just the two of us in the house. I was making tea when I felt it. That familiar sensation. Someone watching me. I turned around. He was standing near the doorway. Silent. His expression wasn't inappropriate. It wasn't aggressive. It was just that same intense gaze from university. The one that made my skin feel cold. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said calmly, "You've grown more confident since your first year." The sentence was simple, but the tone carried weight. I immediately stepped away and kept the conversation short. My heart was racing, not because something dramatic happened, but because the feeling came back. And instincts don't lie twice. After that evening, small things started happening again. Nothing dramatic. Nothing obvious. But subtle. He would stand a little too close during conversations. He would find reasons to start personal discussions when my mother wasn't around. He would mention university memories with a strange smile. And every time, I felt that invisible pressure. Still, he never crossed a clear line. And that's what made it harder. Because how do you accuse someone of something that lives only in tone, silence, and intention? One night, my mother fell asleep early. I was in the living room studying when Ethan sat down across from me. At first, he talked about philosophy, about power, about influence, about how people often misunderstand attention. Then he said something that changed everything. He looked directly at me and said quietly, "Sometimes people confuse admiration with something negative." My chest tightened. He continued, "You were always my most interesting student." The room felt smaller. There it was. Not a confession, not a crime, but an admission of something that never should have existed. And in that moment, I understood the truth I had been avoiding. He didn't marry my mother because of love alone. He married her because I was part of the picture. The realization hit me harder than any dramatic action ever could. Because now it wasn't imagination. It was intention. I barely slept that night. I had two choices. Stay silent and protect my mother's happiness. Speak up and risk breaking her heart. For hours, I stared at the ceiling asking myself, what if I'm wrong? What if I destroy her joy over a misunderstanding? What if she doesn't believe me? But then another thought came. What if I stay silent, and things get worse? The next morning, I asked my mother to sit with me. My hands were shaking, not from fear of him, but fear of hurting her. I didn't accuse. I didn't exaggerate. I simply told her everything. About university. About the gazes. About the discomfort. About the conversation the night before. I expected denial. I expected anger. Instead, she went silent. Completely silent. Then she asked one question. Why didn't you tell me before? And I didn't have a good answer. Because I didn't want to take her happiness away. Tears filled her eyes. Not dramatic tears. But the kind that come from disappointment. Not in me. In him. That evening, she confronted him. I wasn't in the room, but I could hear raised voices. Not screaming, but intensity. Later that night, my mother came into my room. Her face looked older somehow. Calmer. Stronger. She told me something I will never forget. He admitted that he felt an attachment to you when you were his student. He said it was harmless. He said he never intended to act on it. Harmless. That word burned. Because harmless things don't create fear. Harmless things don't make someone feel watched. My mother looked at me and said, I didn't marry him for you. But I will not stay married to someone whose feelings are confused. 2 weeks later, she filed for separation. Quietly. With dignity. Without public drama. He moved out. There were no scandals. No police reports. No public accusations. Just distance. And clarity. My mother never blamed me. Instead, she thanked me. She said, silence protects the wrong people. Those words stayed with me. I'm 30 now. Looking back, I understand something important. Not every danger announces itself loudly. Some dangers whisper. Some cross lines emotionally before they ever attempt to physically. And instincts exist for a reason. I often wonder what would have happened if I ignored that feeling forever. Maybe nothing. Or maybe something worse. But I will never regret choosing honesty over comfort. My mother rebuilt her life again, stronger than before. And I learned something priceless. Love should feel safe. Respect should feel clear. And if something feels wrong, it probably is. If you're watching this and you've ever felt uncomfortable but couldn't explain why, trust yourself. You don't need proof to protect your peace. And if this story moved you, subscribe to this channel. Because sometimes, the stories we are afraid to tell are the ones someone else needs to hear. This was my truth. And now, it's no longer hidden. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more powerful true stories. And remember, always trust your instincts. They exist to protect you.